Hello and welcome back to Spa Business Mastery. I am so glad you're here, dear spa owners, because it obviously means that you have some get up and go and some oomph to improve your spa business, improve your leadership, and as a result, just make this whole spa business ownership a whole lot easier. So today's podcast is titled 3 Leadership Must-Dos When Team Sales Are Down. Now, this might what I'm going to share with you today might not be what you think I'm going to share. Now, if you want to strike fear into the heart of any spa owner, then really all you have to do is tell them that their sales are down and show them that the numbers correlate with the fact that their sales are down. And what you will notice of that spa owner, because this might be you, or it might be a friend that you know, what most spa owners do once they realize sales are really down, they go into a bit of a panic mode and in a way start kind of looking for the problem, because I know you want to fix it, but a lot of times you're in such a panic and you're upset that sales are down, that you tend to lay blame at your team members' feet for the fact that their sales are down or the spa sales are down. Now, I know that it's easy to do. I've been there myself, and yet today I want to share with you that there are leadership aspects that perhaps you haven't thought about that actually is not supporting your team in their sales. So this isn't for me to wag my finger at you or for you to feel bad. The thing is, when you know better, you do better. And that's what this podcast is about. So there's kind of 2 sides to this. I see spa owners getting really upset, laying blame at their team members' feet. And I also see estheticians, employees getting upset at their owners for expecting a lot out of them when they don't feel like they're actually getting the support they need to succeed. So this particular podcast is to help both parties, both the owner and the employee. So let's dive into what my 3 leadership must-dos are to improve your spa and retail sales. All right. So the first piece I want to share about, the first place to look at is your actual, like in terms of product sales, because a lot of times that's, when you're looking at sales, you're looking at retail sales and they're kind of looking abysmal, and you're getting upset because you've told your team that they need to read the product manual, that they need to study it, that they need to sell more, and yet nothing is really happening, right? So nothing's really moving forward. So in terms of your leadership here, I have some questions for you. Has every team member gone through a product knowledge training with the rep or with you? Like, I'm talking like an in-depth 2-day event for product knowledge. Or are you asking your team member just to read the manual and be able to figure it out and be able to sell retail from that? I feel like it's unreasonable to expect most employees to read a manual and ace it in terms of retail sales and even pre-booking. Most people need some sort of structured training in order to really retain their knowledge about product knowledge, because a lot of it is rote memory at first until you start really understanding how things work. So if you haven't, or you're not putting your team through a very in-depth product knowledge training when they get hired on, as well as having that training once a year for the whole team, that might seem a little bit excessive, but it's not. I can tell you for myself that every time I went to that 2-day event for GM Colin, that was a skincare that I used, that I always picked up something new. And by that time, I was already 15 years into being an esthetician. I could have, as an employee, thought that I knew enough. But as an owner, I knew that the value of keep going back to those yearly PK trainings, because we certainly and absolutely do learn little bits more every time. It really solidifies that. All right. Now, what about the other, this kind of dovetails what I was just saying, like, what about once you've done the training, are you booking yearly training? So that's my recommendation for you, because if you're not booking yearly training for the whole team for product knowledge, then everybody's left to their own devices in terms of how much they're learning. And yes, you may say, I want people who are total self-starters and, completely internally motivated. That's just not the reality when you have a team, right? We're humans and we're flawed, and we don't always, we're not always acting or playing out our role perfectly. So it's your job as a leader to make sure you're supporting them in every way you can so that you have set them up for success. Do you keep up with your product knowledge kind of refreshing monthly, weekly? Or is it just, here's your product knowledge training, and then for the rest of the year on and on, we're just expected to increase our sales? So one of the things that is very, very helpful once you've done your yearly product training or first in-depth training is to definitely have a product spotlight at your monthly staff meetings, and to maybe have like a little fun hot seat about products. Like, I'll give you the name of our product, and you, Sarah, okay, go, you're in the hot seat. Tell me the features and the benefits of this particular product. And maybe there's a little prize for each person who gets it. It's fun, it makes it a little more lighthearted, and it helps you to identify which team members are a little weaker in their product knowledge. All right, so number one is to improve your product knowledge support for your team. That means putting together a product knowledge training system, one that happens with onboarding, that happens yearly, and that definitely happens throughout the year at monthly staff meetings. Okay, the next leadership must do is to improve your services support. If bookings are down, it can be because of seasonality. That is an absolute valid reason, but it could also signal that some team members are not as strong as you think they are with some of their services. So maybe they might be struggling with the actual technical part of the treatment. Like, they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't really quite understand how the concepts work, and therefore aren't able to communicate that clearly with their client. So, it's just kind of, it happens in the spa industry with new team members coming on board. And also just with regular existing staff members. But if your sales are down, then that's definitely the red flag, and you need to start looking at which team member is the issue. Okay. Now, when we're talking about needing service support, where you're going to see this in your metrics is going to be in your sales, in your service sales. It's also going to show up in lower retail sales, and will also show up with low pre-booking rates. So if you're noticing really low pre-booking rates, like if it's under 60%, then you've got some detective work to do in terms of which team members are struggling with their pre-booking, why. Maybe it goes back to the number one point I was saying about training. Maybe they need more training and support from you. And so we're looking at pre-booking, sales, and then we're also looking at referrals. Which is pre-booking and referrals is how we really grow our business in this industry in terms of services. So if pre-booking isn't happening, if referrals aren't really happening, then absolutely we've got a problem. So what's the fix for this? It's time to analyze your staff training program and improve the gaps that are correlating to low bookings. So what this looks like is if it's one person, you're noticing that their pre-booking rates are low, then it's time to have a conversation about scripts at the end of the treatment. It's also time to have a conversation about your sales system that happens throughout the treatment. That is, what's being said at the consultation, what's being said at like the skin analysis, what's being said during the treatment, what's being recommended at the end of the treatment. All of those places in the guest experience, and that's just the service, can affect pre-book or rebooking and your overall sales. So it's really important that you're honest about your training program. If you've just kind of shown them, maybe had a couple of days training and then put them on the floor because they seemed okay, I'm going to tell you right now, that's probably okay with a very seasoned esthetician. Not a great idea for somebody that doesn't have at least 2-3 years under their belt for sure. Okay, so what I would recommend if you're noticing that your service sales are down and you're able to identify maybe a couple of people who are maybe weak service providers, it's time to book meetings with them to talk about it. It's not to get mad at them. It's just like, this is what you've noticed and you're here to support them. And this is the plan to support them. And it's going to likely be some one-on-one trainings. And maybe if there's more than one person that you have to have this conversation with, then you can do it as a group, maybe 2 or 3 people together. How I recommend you do your service training. This was shared with me a long time ago by one of my really good esthetician friends. And she was a kick-ass spa manager for a really, really big spa. And what she did, and I have since adopted this, is when you're doing your training, say it's for facial, you're going to give your service provider the facial first because you want them to know what it's supposed to feel like and what kind of conversations and scripts you're talking about. So you're treating them like a client so that they feel the touch, they feel the movements, they get a better overall picture of what this is supposed to be like. So give one, then you want to get one as the trainer from that person. So you're just going to flip around and give that service, and you're going to give them feedback. You're going to give them some feedback during the treatment, and then you're also going to sit down afterwards and have a little debrief and just talk about what your assessment was. Then, so you've given one, you get one, and then you book some models for them to start practicing on. Now, when they start practicing, if they feel like, okay, I feel like I've done a lot better, then basically what you're going to do is get them to test, and that would be they would be giving you the facial in order to be put back on the floor for those treatments. So that is an easy way to get people trained, as well as making sure that their training actually worked. Okay, it's having that little test at the end, hands-on test. Okay, number 3 to help you with your leadership when it comes to sales is to improve your sales tracking support. So you've heard about this. You've heard about it from me. You've heard about it from Daniela Warner. You've heard about it from Maxine Drake. You've heard about it from all sorts of spa consultants and coaches. Track your sales, track your metrics. I'm here to beat the drum again because it's really the only way you can accurately assess where the problem is in terms of sales. So I recommend that you absolutely have a spa scorecard. This is a spreadsheet. You can use it on, if you don't have Excel or whatever, use Google Sheets. It's super easy. The first page, you're going to have the spa scorecard. So that is all the spa metrics as a whole. And then you're going to create other tabs with the same scorecard, but it's going to be for the individual team members' metrics. So you're going to be tracking retail service sales, retail sales, total sales. Then you're going to be tracking these metrics: productivity, which is how booked you are; retail to service ratio. What else have we got? Pre-booking, average ticket, and you can break that down into average service ticket, average retail ticket, and then retention. Although retention is kind of hard to find in a lot of platforms, spa platforms. But regardless of whether it has retention or not, and sometimes they call productivity something different, but those are the metrics that you want to track. Now, if you're only tracking your metrics as spa as a whole, that's great. You've done a great first step, but the problem is that it doesn't allow you to see where the gaps are, like who is dropping the ball. When you are tracking your metrics for each team member, and you need to track them every month, you can see which person is struggling with pre-booking. You can see which person is struggling with productivity, how booked they are. You can see which person is struggling with service to retail sales. So it makes it really easy for you and your leadership to identify where the problem is. Then you can apply the problem-solving solution, which is improving your training system. All right. And then your product knowledge training is under that umbrella. All right. So those are the three places that I recommend leaders, spa leaders, look at first when sales are down, rather than your first kind of, knee-jerk reaction is to get ticked off at your team for not selling because you've already told them blah, 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 right? We know how this goes. And I totally get it because you have so many hats to wear. You just want people to do their jobs. However, my friend, when you took on the role of leadership, you also took on the role of making sure your team is supported properly. I know that you've probably worked for leaders that haven't supported you properly, and it is frustrating to no end because you know that you could do better. You just don't know what you don't know, and you're still kind of trying to figure it out. Okay. So by looking at these three leadership areas, you can identify where you're dropping the ball first. And then fix those systems up. And then if you do need to have these conversations with team members, in your heart of hearts, and in your logical mind, you have literally done everything you can to set them up for success. And if it's probably, if they're not going to follow through with your additional training, then you know that it's probably not an aligned team member. All right. Now, I totally get there are such thing as lazy staff. I've had them as well. They are annoying. annoying, especially when most of the rest of your team are on the ball and show that intrinsic personal leadership themselves. They're curious, they're hungry, they want to do well, they want to be part of the team. But there definitely are those lazy people that they just want to show up, do their job, and not have to be accountable to anything. That's when you know that they're likely not aligned with you and your values and your business anymore. And it's probably time to start making tracks to let them go and start your recruiting and hiring process. You can't change those people. You can try, but if they just won't comply and they're just not really caring, then you've done all you can do and you can tick that box and it's time to move them on. All right. Now, being a leader is not easy. There's all sorts of really wonderful aspects of being a leader, but we also have to be willing to look at maybe the negative parts of our leadership that could use a little polishing up. And that's really what today's podcast is all about. Once you know better, you do better. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Spa Business Mastery.